Hello, happy dragons and friends. Thanks for being here today. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Shira. I'm a snake educator and lover, and I have a YouTube channel called Snake Therapy. And beyond educating about snake husbandry, behavior, building relationships with and habitats for them, the core of my mission is to talk about how interacting with snakes has therapeutic benefits for humans. And I've spent just over a year now looking into how and why they are such popular pets for people with neurodivergence in particular. It's been honestly a life-changing journey. It's seriously amazing. So I've decided to assemble the knowledge and insights that I've gained through that process into a presentation that I could share with audiences beyond my own channel. And Happy Dragons was kind enough to host. And for those of you who don't know, Happy Dragons is a reptiles first platform that aims to improve herpetoculture standards and captive animal welfare through the promotion of science and evidence-based care practices. So awesome. You can join the community for free on their Discord, and you can sign up for a subscription to the platform to get personalized care advice from a whole team of folks with various backgrounds and experience with reptiles. And I'm really proud to be part of that team of helpers. So I'll be offering support for things like bonding and trust building with your snakes, designing and building habitats, and more. So definitely check out Happy Dragons, and thanks to them for having me on today. Just a few notes before we dive into the presentation. So the presentation is going to be available as a PDF you can download. So if you'd like to do that, there's going to be a link to it in the description below this video. And then the final page on that presentation is a list of some articles and publications I've either cited or referenced throughout the presentation. And if you see an asterisk on the screen and within the wording, it means that you can find more information on the subject on that reference page. For simplicity and brevity, I decided not to include every single article reference within the presentation on the screen, unless it was a direct quote or a restatement of my references. And then I'm going to read the presentation first, but I'll be looking at the live chat and answering and addressing any comments or questions that come up at the end. So feel free to drop them in there, and as we go along, and I'll get to them after I've finished presenting. So I hope you stick around for that. And lastly, I do have a playlist of videos on my channel specifically dedicated to this topic and the interviews I've recorded. So if you want more, or you want to hear testimonies directly from some of the people that I've spoken with, definitely check that out. It should also be in the description below. All right, so let me get this pulled up for us. All right. Reptiles and Neurodiversity, Neurodivergent Connection and Caretaking. So the purpose of this webinar is to examine the therapeutic benefits of interacting with reptiles, particularly for neurodivergent individuals, by identifying beneficial aspects of herpetoculture and incorporating neurodivergent perspectives. The goal is to share my research findings with the public and academic communities to reduce biases against snakes and establish snake therapy as a legitimate therapeutic intervention. So we'll be defining neurodivergence and neurodiversity in some terms that you'll hear repeatedly throughout the presentation first. We'll talk about herpetoculture and how reptiles relate to neurodivergence. And we'll talk about snake therapy, my personal experience, field work, and motivations. And then we'll talk about the survey that I built collecting data from the neurodivergent community directly. We'll talk about a lot of the common themes that I've found amidst the very diverse responses that I got. And we'll touch on snake therapy and neurodivergent children specifically. And then we'll move on to therapeutic applications and how a lot of these are universally beneficial. They can bridge communities and have positive effects through education and on animal welfare. So first, let's define some terms that you're going to be seeing throughout this webinar. Neurodiversity is the concept that there is natural variation in how people's brains work. There are a wide range of ways that people perceive and respond to the world around them, and there's no right or correct way. Neurotypical is a non-medical term that describes people whose brains develop and work like most people's brains do. Neurodivergence is divergence in mental or neurological function from what is considered typical or normal. And then herpetoculture, the keeping of live reptiles in captivity, whether as a hobby or for commercial breeding or as companion animals. So talk about neurodiversity and neurodivergence. So as we said before, neurodiversity is the concept that there is natural variation in how people's brains work, a whole wide range of ways people can perceive and respond to the world around them, which means neurotypicality is included within neurodiversity. Neurodivergence encompasses a wide range of neurological conditions, or a spectrum, with the most commonly discussed being ADHD, autism, and various learning or sensory processing disorders. Can also include things like anxiety and depression disorders, bipolar, etc. Individuals with neurodivergent brains may think, learn, and perceive the world in unusual ways. But despite the names of many of these conditions containing the word disorder, a core principle of the neurodiversity movement holds that having different neurological functions does not make someone inferior to those with typical brain function. And some people may know her, or some people may not. Temple Grandin, who's a pretty famous inventor, ethologist, and autism spokesperson, said it very well by saying, "I am different, not less." So we'll talk about herpetoculture. Reptiles are some of the most malign and misunderstood creatures in the animal kingdom. They are seen as weird or different choices to keep as pets and often intentionally harmed out of fear in the wild. Contrary to their monstrous public image, though, these animals are beautiful and gentle and can serve as excellent companion animals, providing emotional support. This is why I started my YouTube channel, Snake Therapy, to help educate, dispel myths, increase compassion, and captive care by sharing stories of how these animals can help us heal. Working with an animal therapy nonprofit for the last 4 years, I've had countless opportunities to watch how both neurotypical and neurodivergent people respond to reptiles. In my experience, neurodivergent people often have less fear and skepticism of reptiles, initially at least, than neurotypical people, and they're often more drawn to them than other animals. Reptiles, and snakes in particular, seem to have an extremely calming effect. Being neurodivergent myself, I began to look more deeply at the benefits snakes brought to my own mental and emotional health, specifically through the lens of someone with ADHD, anxiety, and depression. So, as I became more involved with the herpetoculture community, I started to notice more and more references to neurodivergence in posts by other community members online. And I realized there might be more to uncover here, that perhaps reptiles could be particularly healing to those with neurodivergent brains. So I decided to create a survey to gather information directly from them to ask, what is it about reptiles that make them so appealing to us? So we'll go over the survey and how it was built and how I pulled in the information. My survey was built to allow anonymous responses, but also for those who might want to speak with me in more depth or even be interviewed for the YouTube channel. I was absolutely blown away by the amount of engagement. After creating the survey, I participated in an interview on the Animals at Home podcast with about 60 responses received at the time. Dylan showed great interest in the topic, and his platform's reach increased engagement. And I continued making videos, including interviews with contributors. And I now have 150 responses, and they continue to trickle in over a year later. So the survey was built to gather data that was both quantifiable and unique. So by using checkboxes and drop-down menus, I could aggregate data points based on how many people responded. For the unique responses, I posed questions that allowed free-form text answers. Take a drink of water. It turned out that even the free-form text answers could provide quantifiable data points. Within each answer, I began to identify recurring themes. So those recurring themes became reflection records, which could be linked to each person who mentioned it. And in this way, I could quantify the percentage of times the theme was repeated across all of the survey responses. So now we'll talk about the results and the common themes that came up throughout all of these responses that I thought were the most significant. If we look at broad strokes first, if you roll up the specific therapeutic benefits into broad categories, I could see that interacting with snakes and reptiles supports cognitive function, sensory processing, behavioral regulation, emotional regulation, identity and confidence building, coping mechanisms, and communication and social connection. Now let's review more specific common themes that were repeated across a majority of the survey responses. Reptiles have a calming, soothing effect and help ease anxiety and symptoms of depression. Stress and anxiety levels were reportedly reduced, whether through direct contact, visual stimulation, or simply a sense of fascination and wonder. Those with attention deficits felt less antsy and distracted when interacting with their reptiles, saying they felt more grounded. People mentioned a sense of comfort in their reptile's presence that soothed them and brought them joy when they were otherwise feeling down. Researching and learning about reptiles and herpetoculture provides a healthy direction for attention and energy, a positive outlet for hyperfocus. And for those of you who don't know, hyperfocus is a phenomenon that reflects one's complete absorption in a task to the point where a person appears to completely ignore or tune out everything else. And this is very common with ADHD. Hyperfocus can be channeled positively via herpetoculture through learning about reptiles and improving care. Neurodivergent individuals often dedicate themselves to specific interests, finding comfort in these focused pursuits, and those pursuits and expertise enable better connections with the animals as well as fellow enthusiasts. This one's my favorite and was repeated again and again. Outcasts know outcasts, like knows like. Neurodivergent people feel a sense of otherness from typical society. They often feel misunderstood, disregarded, and discriminated against. They're drawn to and feel a kinship with reptiles because these animals are also maligned and misunderstood, seen as weird or strange. They feel like they get reptiles sometimes more than they do people. The reptiles don't judge them or have expectations for the caretaker's emotional or mental state. Therefore, neurodivergent people don't feel the need to mask their feelings, behaviors, or be anything other than themselves. Reptiles also don't react negatively to a lack of facial expressions or eye contact like mammalian pets and other humans might. So many neurodivergent people have challenges with processing and or expressing emotions like neurotypical people do, whether that's verbally or through facial expressions and nonverbal cues. This doesn't mean they don't have feelings, nor that they can't communicate. Likewise, reptiles are often assumed to be thoughtless, emotionless creatures because they don't express emotions in the same way that mammals do. Yet science has proven that they do have the capacity to think and feel, and there's an astounding amount of anecdotal evidence to support this as well. And I just wanted to put this quote in. This is from a snake therapy Discord community member, and I thought it was really beautifully put and just perfect for this concept. Today, I'm thinking about how unfair it is when people say snakes aren't social animals, so they're incapable of liking other creatures or their owners. No, they're generally not social animals, so they haven't necessarily evolved ways to clearly communicate a wide range of emotion to other creatures. But just because they can't tell us in a way we recognize does not mean they don't feel anything. Autistic people are often treated the same way, particularly if they're nonverbal. People assume that because somebody doesn't communicate normally, that person must not understand what's happening around them or what's being said about them. Wider assumptions are made about their mental functioning based on how they're able to communicate. I'm 31 and just now learning to train myself to facially emote. I can have a great time, but people will still assume I'm in a bad mood because I'm not showing it with my face. So it hits kind of personally when people aren't willing to consider communication styles outside of what they already know. Again, this commonality creates a sense of kinship and understanding. Many neurodivergent people feel like they can tap into behavioral communication from their reptiles because they relate to having different methods of expression. Other common themes that came up a lot: reptiles require lower engagement levels and are less overstimulating than other pets. Most reptiles do not require daily feeding and exercise, nor do they need to be touched. If a neurodivergent person is having a hard day, they can retreat and take time for themselves without neglecting their animal. They don't generally jump on or lick you or make loud noises or have strong smells. All of these things can prove extremely overwhelming for neurodivergent people with sensory sensitivities. Physical contact is almost always on the caretaker's terms as opposed to being forced upon them. Therefore, reptiles offer companionship without overwhelm. Deep pressure stimulation, or DPS, is defined as firm but gentle squeezing, hugs, or holding. When applied, the body switches from running its sympathetic nervous system, which is responsible for fight or flight, to its parasympathetic nervous system, which is responsible for the rest and digest mode. The latter brings a sense of calm to the mind and body by slowing heart rate, relaxing muscles, and improving circulation. The gentle constriction from a snake's muscles or the weight of its body is a method of DPS and can be extremely comforting to neurodivergent people. The snake becomes, in essence, a weighted blanket. Stimming refers to methods of self stimulation, including repetitive physical behaviors and movements, which can serve a purpose by helping people to cope with emotions or relieve stress. And it's common with autistic people. There's nothing wrong with stimming behaviors on the whole, but some, such as nail biting, hair pulling, or skin scratching, can be detrimental. Handling a snake can provide the sensory benefits and satisfaction of a stimming behavior without harm to the individual. Some common challenges that neurodivergent people face include difficulty planning and prioritizing, motivation, maintaining routines, and completing tasks. These challenges can then lead to or exacerbate anxiety and depression. But many people have reported that their reptiles help to counteract these challenges. Pet reptile ownership provides a sense of purpose that enhances motivation for daily activities without the demanding and sometimes overstimulating attention or needs required by other types of pets. This responsibility offers quiet rewards without excessive pressure, making herpetoculture especially beneficial for neurodivergent individuals. Despite the prevailing misconception and assumption that reptiles don't feel emotions and are incapable of bonding with humans, a majority of the people surveyed felt a deep sense of connection and relationship with their pet reptiles. Because reptiles are naturally evolved to fear large mammals, it takes a certain amount of patience and attention in order to gain their trust. And it's exactly that unique trust building experience that many neurodivergent people noted was so special for them. They felt that their relationships with their reptiles were significant because it wasn't easy. Earning trust was a rewarding and empowering experience that made them feel bonded to the animal. And many are convinced that their animals recognize them or even show behavior akin to affection. Despite the ongoing debate about anthropomorphizing reptiles, evidence suggests that they show unique responses to different individuals, indicating possible bonding. Nevertheless, anthropomorphism can benefit emotional well being through enhanced compassion. As as psychologist Nicholas Epley notes, anthropomorphism is actually a natural consequence of the tendency that makes humans exceptionally intelligent. He asserts that recognizing that the minds and personalities of other animals involves the same psychological processes we use to recognize consciousness in other human beings. Increased compassion is not only good for humans, but can benefit our animals as well. And we'll get into that a little later in the presentation. Bonding and trust building with the reptiles can empower and influence a caretaker's external relationships with other people and the world around them. The ability to connect with beings so different from ourselves requires self reflection, self regulation, and empathy. Bonds with reptiles can inspire a desire to communicate with other humans who feel the same, or to positively influence others' perspectives about these animals that are generally feared or scorned. So now we'll talk about neurodivergent children specifically and reptiles. Testimonies about the impact of reptiles on neurodivergent children and their families have proven, at least for me, to be some of the most compelling evidence for how and why these particular animals can be of benefit, both in the short and long-term management of symptoms and struggles. Scarlett, an autism and ADHD presenting child with sensory processing disorder, was 7 years old when she first came into contact with a snake. Before this, she had frequent, extreme, and long-lasting breakdowns, unable to communicate her needs or control her emotional responses. Upon her first interaction with a snake in a pet store, her parents described changes in her behavior they had never witnessed before. When she started to become agitated and the snake responded in, in fear by coiling up, she noticed this and modified her behavior to make it feel more safe. In turn, the snake uncoiled and relaxed, exploring and resting with her for over an hour. And I just have to say that even still, every time I talk about this, I get chills. And I've talked about it a lot. During an interview I did with her father soon thereafter, she became upset and inconsolable about a small disagreement with her friends. Upon showing her one of my snakes, she immediately stopped crying and became calm, interested, and then delighted. Despite her father saying her outbursts usually lasted hours, she resumed playing within minutes of this interaction, and that was just through a screen. And you can see the interaction right there. Despite hesitation from her mom, who had a fear of snakes, the family decided to get Scarlett a pet snake named Coco, and their world was forever changed. 6 months later, Scarlett was described by family, friends, and teachers as a totally different kid. She significantly improved her ability to regulate her emotional responses, displayed increased empathy towards the snake and other people in her life, and improved her communication skills and the capacity to express her needs. Most notably, these improvements were not limited to the times when she was physically with the animal. After years of feeling like she was the bad kid in school, Scarlett began to make connections between her own difference and the fact that her snake was a different pet to those that her peers had. She began to realize that different wasn't bad, but it could be something special. She began to accept herself more and to develop more self-confidence. Her love of snakes became a sense of identity she previously didn't have. She recognized when others around her needed compassionate care and offered it willingly. She helped her mom to conquer her fear of snakes with kindness and patience. And I've got a couple quotes from her parents here. Her mom said, "Accepting who you are is a process when you're not accepted in the community you're in." And her dad said, "The whole thing has given her a sense of identity. Having the snake is starting to help her figure out who she is." Feeling a deep, comforting bond with her snake encouraged her to develop and maintain routines and a sense of responsibility. Colton's family had been struggling for years to find suitable methods of dealing with his quote unquote meltdowns brought on by suspected autism and sensory processing issues. It wasn't until the family got a ball python that things began to shift. Colton's parents were so moved by the difference in his behavior that his mother wrote a book about their experience, and the couple started a low profit business centered around sharing their snakes with the community, which included a small scale breeding program to produce socialized companion animals specifically for neurodivergent children, calling it a lifeline for others who might be experiencing similar challenges. Nicole, Colton's mother, said, "We had been struggling for so long that it felt like nothing was ever going to work. And then the minute he got his hands on that ball python, we realized that I don't think we'll ever be without a snake in our lives." Andrew, Colton's father, said, "He sat down and I got him to take 3 deep breaths and I handed the snake to him, and that was the end of it. He just melted into the floor." Nicole said, "You can try to convince people all day long, but until they see or experience that, my mind was just blown." And if you want to hear any of this directly from Nicole and Andrew and Dave and Liz, please go check out the videos. I interviewed them for, and they're on my channel, and they're really absolutely moving, and they still give me chills to this day. Scarlett and Colton are testaments to the fact that traditional therapy alone isn't always effective. Incorporating snakes into talk therapy sessions or through guided interactive experiences could do wonders for both children and adults of all walks of life and neurotypes. With the knowledge of how beneficial reptiles can be for neurodivergent people, my hope is to normalize the concept of reptiles, specifically snakes, as therapy animals in both formal and informal settings, and not strictly for those with neurodivergence. Because reptiles are hypoallergenic, they could be introduced as comforting care in hospice or hospital situations where dander from mammalian therapy animals might aggravate sensitive or immunocompromised people. Our nonprofit organization, The Little Zoo, regularly visits senior care homes with reptiles, offering comforting touch to those who have gone without it, often for years. Some more therapeutic applications. A great example is from Adrienne, who is a lifelong educator who discovered she was neurodivergent when her children were diagnosed. She was terrified of snakes for most of her life, but after some educational videos convinced her that they weren't what she'd been led to believe, she fell deeply in love with them and started a business called Awe Nature, bringing both neurodivergent and neurotypical community members together for guided educational art programs that incorporated snakes and the appreciation of the natural world. Attendees would be able to create artwork to process their feelings and the experience of learning about snakes, fostering a deeper appreciation for nature and the recognition that things and people that are different aren't always what they seem, and that we can find common ground if we work together and open our minds. So many of these therapeutic aspects of working with reptiles are universally beneficial. You don't have to be neurodivergent to feel soothed, fascinated by, or joyful from an interaction with a snake, especially if the interaction is provided in the right setting. By acknowledging that these benefits can be universal while also recognizing diversity and neurodivergent voices, we can simultaneously nurture the reptile community as a whole, encourage better caretaking standards, and foster a wider appreciation for these misunderstood animals. Another universal benefit is biophilic design and creative outlet. Biologist E.O. Wilson's biophilia hypothesis was the idea that humans possess an innate tendency to seek connections with nature and other forms of life. But as technology advances and becomes more ingrained in daily life, we are more and more separated from the natural world. Herpetoculture offers us a way to reconnect with nature, especially through building naturalistic habitats for our reptiles. Many responses in the survey noted that their reptiles offered them a little slice of nature to enjoy that brought them a sense of peace. So building and maintaining reptile habitats also serves as a creative outlet, which eases anxiety, boosts self-confidence, and supports mental and emotional health. Positive impacts and outcomes. One is through education. Education is key to the preservation and respect of the natural world and each other. Sharing the positive benefits reptiles have on mental health and helping others to understand the importance of these animals' place in the ecosystem is a net positive for reptiles, the environment, captive welfare, and can support the neurodiversity movement. Teaching people to respect bio and neurodiversity benefits all of us, whether we have skin or scales, and regardless of how our brains work. The more we understand and feel connected to and or benefited by something, the more care and attention we tend to give it. Therefore, the feelings of kinship, calm, and happiness we feel from caring for reptiles increases the likelihood that we will work to increase the welfare of the animals in return. Decreasing our own stress can encourage us to decrease stress to captive reptiles. Neurodivergent keepers often pay extreme attention to detail in their husbandry, show a high level of compassion towards their animals, and spend extra time and energy learning how to improve their care standards. But this isn't limited to certain neurotypes. If we work to educate more people about these animals and the benefits they offer. So, in conclusion, they take care of us, so we should take care of them. By illustrating how these animals can benefit us, it's my hope to reduce public bias and violence against them. Promoting educational and therapeutic programs with reptiles might help more people accept that these animals have a valuable place in our homes as well as in the wild. In amplifying neurodivergent voices, I also hope to foster a deeper understanding of how our differences can make us stronger together. Just a little bit of gratitude before I close this down. A huge thanks to Dave for his support while I worked on this, and of course for sharing Scarlett's incredible journey to inspire the world through my platform. And thank you, Scarlett, as well. To my amazing husband, John, thank you. Thanks for your love and support. Otherwise, I would not be able to hyper-focus on things like this and therefore bring awareness of snake therapy to more people. And thanks to Savannah and the whole team at Happy Dragons for offering to host and promote this. And you can see here, I do have a bunch of works cited and references for you if you'd like to download the PDF. The link should be in the description of the video below. All right. Chat. I can't see anybody's chat. So I'll see if Sav can pass along. Here we go. Got it. Thanks everyone for being here. Now I can see the chat. I hope that was at least somewhat interesting for folks. Does anyone have any questions? I'm going to look through this. How many interviews have I done? I haven't done a count. I could look at my Reptiles and Neurodiversity playlist, which is also in the description below, but that doesn't include, there's 2 or 3 that I haven't released yet that are still in the works. And it's just as I can schedule them. So I have 150 responses in total to the survey. And I, don't have that many interviews, but the people that have expressed interest in speaking with me, I've interviewed lots of them. I continue to work my way through that list, and some of them are not released. They're just chats, and then some of them are. So I don't have a full count. I'd have to look back at that for you. Oh, yeah, that's a good one. Expos can be overwhelming. Yeah, so expos can be overwhelming even for neurotypical folks. Do you have strategies or prep tips that help neurodiverse keepers manage the sensory load while still enjoying them? Yeah, I feel you on this. So, advice. Take breaks. I have to I pack like some little snacks in my backpack, and I take regular breaks and walk outside. I have to, because I'm usually there the whole time for 2 days sometimes. And it's too much for me. And when I had a booth, that was even harder. But just going, it's so overwhelming. So definitely I would take breaks, have something to occupy yourself with, or not, just go breathe outside, and step away from the madness. If I don't do that, I'll leave really soon. After I get there, I have to do it. And then one person that I actually talked to at an expo was the mom of a neurodivergent person, and she was there instead of him, which I thought was really incredible, because he couldn't handle it. So they had this relationship through reptiles. Because he loved reptiles, they had started bonding more, and she offered to go for him to get him animals and supplies that he was interested in getting. So that's another thing. You could send someone else if you have an awesome mom like that. Mm. As a follow-up, as a vendor at shows, is there anything I can do to make my booth more neuro-friendly? It's a good question. When I had a booth, I specifically, had a whole little kind of little sign that specifically said, "Are you neurodivergent? So am I. If you want to chat with me about that, you can." And the only problem was that, sometimes I'm like engaged with a bunch of different people. And luckily I had friends and my husband with me at the booth, so that some people came up and said, can I talk to her about this? And I really just hoped that I was making people feel seen by having that there, and saying like, hey, put down your name and your phone number. If you want to walk away, I'll call you and you can come back and we can just talk, so. Are there enclosure layouts or workflows you've seen that make routine tasks like spot cleaning or feeding less overwhelming for keepers? Layouts. That I've seen? I mean, I don't know that I could judge other people's. For me personally, uh, I have to do things in a certain order to keep myself from skipping or forgetting things. So I guess being like, okay, I'm moving in this direction and I'm going to do all the things for one task, like water bowls. Like, so I'll go all the way through for water bowls. And sometimes I get derailed if I like see some poop that needs cleaning or something, and then I'll go and do that, and then I'll kind of lose my place. So kind of coming up with strategies, I guess, and ways that I'm like, nope, don't, I can wait on that. I have to go in this order. Like this morning, I actually did that. I was like, I see that. I'm going to clean it, but I'm going to wait because I have all these other things to do. So maybe find ways to kind of come up with, ways to make it habit forming. This is what I do every morning. This is what I do every Tuesday. This is the direction that I move in so I don't forget things. I hope that was a good answer. And just habit forming in general for keeping up with tasks. I often, can you put that back up there? I often feel like I overwhelm people with my level of detail and care while giving advice. Are there tips to make instructions easier to understand and take? Yeah, I feel that. I mean, I would first of all say don't second guess yourself. Um, you've got a lot to offer, and what you have to offer is really, really useful. And so, I mean, if you're second guessing yourself and like being like, oh, am I too much? Like, I, I, I don't think you should do that. Then again, I mean, it's up to the other person to say like, okay, that's more than I asked for or whatever. But Sav, you've got so much to give. I don't think you should overthink that. Don't hyper focus on it. I'm trying to look at these. Yeah. Water placement. Trying to scroll up here. Does anyone have, oh, hey Wes. I don't know if you're still here, but I hope you saw your photo in the in the presentation. Cydia said, I still love hearing about Scarlet. And yeah, every time. I get chills every time. Mel says, I absolutely have that issue too. I can give 2 hours of details on diet when the poor person just asked a basic question. I do use a care sheet to hand out. Yes. That is, I mean, the care sheet thing is a good way. I mean, if you're really worried about overwhelming people, like I had a bunch of care sheets printed out from Reptiles at my booth. And, that was helpful on so many fronts because I didn't know about all the species, but I wanted people to take them. And people would ask me about the animals and I'd just be like, here, but then I could also go off on some of them. And I was just like, you know what? I don't need to overwhelm you. Here, I have a bunch from Mariah and I trust them. So take care sheets. And also no one has care sheets at Reptile Exodus, and it makes me crazy that that's not a thing. So yeah. Scarlett just heard her name and got excited. That's I hope she would. I said thank you to her at the end specifically because I hoped she would hear it. Hi, Wes. I'm so glad you're still here. Thank you all for being here. I really appreciate it. I hope that this was a cohesive thing that wasn't I don't know. I hyper focused on this for months. Just getting this together. But it felt like, I'm not going to stop looking into this. It's such an incredible experience for me too. I mean, I thought I was making a YouTube channel being like, yay, snakes are awesome and they help us and they make us feel good. But when this started coming up and I started talking to people or hearing from people specifically about, their neurodivergence and that, my life changed. I mean, it just blew me away. And I've met and talked with so many people I never would have otherwise because of this. So, I mean, that's part of it. And yeah, I feel this deep sense of dedication to the subject. Also because a lot of comments I've seen on my videos or through Instagram or whatever, people just randomly hit me up saying, I feel seen. And that just makes me feel really emotional. And it makes me feel like this is really, really important to talk about. Oh, yes, I will be Sav's captive for questions in the Happy Dragons live chat that will be in what? An hour? No. 2 hours? 5 p.m. PST, 8 p.m. EST. Yeah, it's a good community. I agree. And I'm really grateful to all of the familiar faces that and names I'm seeing in the chat. I really appreciate you guys. I mean, yeah, I can't even really express how grateful. So, yeah, if there's any other questions about the topic, about, the data that I got, let me know. And if not, then I can stop talking your ear off and we can call it quits on this. I do have one interview I'm about to release. Thank you, Mikey. It should be out hopefully within the next few days. It's an interview with, she's a neurodivergent keeper, but she's also an educator. And it's a particularly interesting story because she started off getting really excited about breeding ball pythons and got totally disillusioned because of ethical issues, and became an educator instead. And now she's doing all sorts of educational programs, has had some very interesting experiences with that. And so that will be the next one that's going to be released. And Mikey says, any more surveys you've got in the works? No, I mean, this one just, until let me rephrase that. So for now, people can keep answering this survey. I mean, it's only got 150 people, right? So more people, hopefully after this. Sav, we should put the link to the survey in the description at some point, but it's on my channel. Anyway, more people can keep coming at this survey forever, right? However, if I end up working with somebody in the scientific community who wants to do this, to work with me and publish some of this, I will probably have to make a new survey that is more official. I think Dave would be able to tell me better, but I need to have people understand that the data would be used for a paper or something. So other than that, this survey is just going to keep going because it brings me interaction with people. Yeah, I did talk to Erin. We didn't talk about that yet, but hopefully I will. But yeah, I mean, this is just like a great way to keep having cool interactions with people, keep getting the word out, keep sharing stories for now. I mean, I'm not a scientist, I'm not a researcher, but I do have, this is a great way to share this with a wider audience. And then hopefully I can connect with a scientist or a researcher or a psychologist or someone who wants to get this out to more people in a more official capacity. It meets the standards. All right. Anybody? Oh yeah, if you can like that video, hit the like button down below. That'd be great. And yeah, if there's no more questions, I think I'll call it, and then I will see hopefully some of you in an hour or two. Thanks so much to everybody who showed up. I really appreciate you.